We are very privileged to have as our guest Tom Davis, who was in the House of Representatives for 7 years, representing...
7 terms.
7 terms, rather, representing portions of Northern Virginia. He left in 2008.
And I left undefeated and unindicted, something I'm also...
He's been on the George Mason Board of Visitors since 2013 and is the head of that, which has the title, very nice antiquated title of rector.
Well, the base has migrated basically from the country club to the country. I mean, when you just become a much more rural party. I put it this way: if you live in a county with a Whole Foods in it, it probably voted for Hillary Clinton. If you live in a county with a Cracker Barrel, it probably voted for Trump. And I swear this lady at a speech said, well, Mr. Davis, I don't mean to correct you, but don't you mean Crate and Barrel? And I just said, I rest my case. Anger is what drives voters more than being positive. For most members, the only election that counts is the primary election. The general election is just nothing but a constitutional formality. And so you cater to your primary voters. Well, part of it's candidate selection. I mean, 2013, I think, was a set-up year for Republicans. Obama's still in office. He's very unpopular. But they nominated Ken Cuccinelli, and they put a lieutenant governor candidate up there to win that. I think under ordinary circumstances, if the party nominated a mammal, they would have won the race. but they nominated people that were just way outside of the mainstream and lost it. I thought McCain-Feingold was one of the worst bills we ever passed. I was a floor manager against it. This was the so-called campaign finance reform bill. It took this evil soft money, that's corporate dollars and high contributions from wealthy individuals. Candidates couldn't raise it and parties couldn't raise it. It said, you can't take it. The law illegal. Sounds pretty good, right? I said, well, that's great. Where do you think this money's going to go? So it's the law of unintended consequences, but we get so emotional in politics when we see a problem, we tend to try to overfix it. We kind of overdo it. And so the end result is campaign finance is worse than it's ever been, and interest groups are stronger today than they've ever been. Well, first of all, I think most of the people I know in politics are there for the right reasons. They want to get, they're as frustrated as you are sometimes, but if you're not elected, you can't get anything done. So I think we tend to, I mean, people used to say, I'm paying your salary. Yeah, I made a lot more before I came to Congress. I make a lot more if I leave here. I'm doing this as a public service because I think I can make a difference for my community. It's hard to see Republicans holding the House. And we just don't know. They know a wave is coming in. We don't know how big that wave is going to be on Election Day. But it ought to be enough to get them 23 seats.
And what about in the Senate?
I think it's very hard for the Democrats. Democrats would then need to pick up 3 seats. I think Arizona and Nevada are good shots for them. They're not sure shots. I think they're very close races. Yeah. But they clearly are in competition in those seats. The difficulty Brat has is he has never closed the deal with the Cantor Republicans. And I think many of them would just as soon give that district to the Democrats for 2 years just to get rid of them and even the score. And that's his major problem down in that district. I think Comstock has a more difficult race just because of the demographics and voter behavior of the 10th district. And I think the 2nd district also in jeopardy because Scott Taylor, the Republican there, is caught up in a really mini scandal, but they tried to get a third party on the ballot and forged some signatures, and these were people that were working for him. And then the people took the fifth when they asked him if Scott knew anything about it, and so he just mishandled this thing. 0 shot.
0 shot?
0 shot. The generic ballot there is 8 ballots, is 8 points for the Republicans. The Republican there will have enough money to get through, but the polling there does not show it close. Okay. And that's a pretty Republican district outside of Charlottesville. I mean, they did come up with a plan. It wasn't, it's nothing that's perfect, but neither is Obamacare perfect. If you look at Obamacare and the premiums rising over time, there's a lot of issues that remain with that. Here's the problem. When you start nationalizing health care, where's your allocation of resources? My theory is simply this, that we spend too much money basically on rewarding retirees. Medicare, Medicaid, a good chunk of that is nursing homes, pensions, the debt service. You put all that together, that's well over half the budget. It's closer to 2/3 of the budget, basically spent on old people. That's money we can't spend on education. We can't spend on research and development. We can't spend on infrastructure. That's the General Motors model. It's the reason the people are voting. It's culture. It's not culture. They're old school. And all these cultural changes around them, they feel threatens their status. People are voting their cultural preference, not their economic preference. So it depends how big their margin is. If it's really close, if they take it like under 10 votes, I think you're going to go more than one ballot before they decide what to do. I think she still ends up as Speaker because you can take a pledge, I'm not going to vote for Pelosi, but if you don't vote or you abstain, she only needs a majority of those who vote for a candidate. But it may take a couple votes. It'll take a majority in both houses. That's what it'll take. Look, as often happens, and by the way, I've been to Yemen, and I don't know if anybody's been to Yemen. In Yemen, they chew this stuff called cotton, and the country's half high by noon. Yemen and Somalia, these countries have never amounted to much. And I want America to turn into that. So I take a more conservative. Let me finish. So that's my bent on this thing.